Today, I would like to share with you the secret of the shofar. One of them, anyways. And what is this shofar all about? How does that affect our lives? What happens at the moment of the blowing of the shofar of Rosh Hashanah? And why is it so important? The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh explains that the sound of the shofar is actually a sound of a pure, simple, unalterated, unfragmented voice. Kol Pashut. What happens during the blowing of the shofar? So he says a parable of one who went away, a prince who went away to faraway cities. And he mixed himself up with other people. And unfortunately, he forgot his language. It's possible he might have forgotten he is a prince. And finally, when he realizes he's a prince, he decides to come back home. And at the moment he comes back home, nobody recognizes him. He barely recognizes himself. So what does he do? He starts speaking, but they're not understanding his language. So at that moment, he realizes how low he stooped and how far he is. And he has nothing else to be able to get close to the king or even get through these massive doors guarded by guards with ammunition. What does he do? He starts crying. That cry is bokeah, comes from the depth of his heart. And therefore, it reaches the depth of the king's heart and he recognizes the voice. And at that moment, he tells his servants, open the door. And the king is there to embrace his child. When we hear this story, we understand that the cry of the shofar is the cry of somebody that has gone through different experiences and has no more words to express himself. It's a very, very deep cry. When I think of this cry, I think of myself standing in front of Hashem on the day of Rosh Hashanah and thinking that every day has 1,440 minutes. And this year, with the extra month, the leap year, we had 385 or 86 days. And if I were to reduce and say, how much have I given you, Hashem, back during this time, it's like a handful. How many minutes in our day do we actually consecrate or dedicate to something which is holy, to something which is helping others, or connecting to our higher self, connecting to God, giving tzedakah, visiting the sick, helping the poor, praying? Of course, every year it increases a little more. But really, we come before God on the day of Rosh Hashanah as what we call Rashim. Rashim, Resh, Shin, Yud, Mem, which means poor people. People which really don't have much to offer. And therefore, the only cry we have is, you know what, Hashem, with all the kindnesses that you did for me, what can I offer? Reminds me the story of Rabbi Yitzhak David Grossman. I think I've shared it with you, but I'll share it again. One day, he was with a great philanthropist at the Kotel. And there was a religious man next to the Kotel reading Tehillim with a lot of fervor, sobbing and crying and pouring his soul out. And the rabbi was so touched by the sincerity and that deep cry that he said to the philanthropist, look, If his problem is in the order which is financial, is in a financial order, in something which has to do with a material problem, you'll take care of it. He said, okay. And if he said, and if it's spiritual, I'll take care of it. He said, okay. So Rabbi Grossman went up to the man and said, I see that you're crying. Can I help you? Do you have a financial problem? Maybe your house, maybe you have a... He said, no, everything is fine. Thank you very much. Okay. Maybe you have a difficulty that you want to talk about with a rabbi, somebody which will maybe give you spiritual guidance. He says, no, everything is fine. Rabbi Grossman couldn't hold back his curiosity and said to the man, so why are you sobbing? Why are you crying so much? He says, look, I have 12 children and I just married off my 12th child and we just finished the Sheva Brachot. For me to have accomplished the marriage of my 12 children with my financial situation and with my health and everything, the kindnesses that God bestowed me with are so great. I can only cry out, thank you to Hashem for everything that you have given me. The shofar is that cry of the heart, a cry of gratitude, a cry that comes from a very, very, very deep place, a cry of return. Mina metzar karatiya bamecha vananiya. Hashem, we call you from the straits, from a small hole. We call you from a very tight place. Bamecha vananika. Hashem just opens something which is much bigger. What is the difference between being in a tight place and in a wide place? Being somewhere where you are persecuted, hurt, broken, and being in a place where everything is in abundance with a great, large, everything is with a large hand. Where do you want to be in the coming year? The day of Rosh Hashanah, our sages teach us that the abundance and the energy that comes this Rosh Hashanah contains the whole year. All the abundance, all the affluence, all the blessings of health, wealth, nachat, everything comes on the day of Rosh Hashanah. And the energy that's going to come this Rosh Hashanah never came before. How do we draw down this energy? Through the sound of the shofar. Comes the Rebbe and revisits this parable of the Baal Shem Tov. And he tells us the story of a great rabbi by the name of Rav Zera. Rav Zera lived in Babylonia. And Rav Zera was going to make his aliyah to go to Eretz Israel, to the Holy Land. Now, there are two Talmuds, for those who don't know yet. There's the Talmud of Babylonia, and there's the Talmud of Jerusalem. The Babylonian Talmud is one which is built on questions, answers, refutations, depth, going back and forth, argument, till you extract from the darkness the light. You extract the answer that you are looking for. The Talmud of Jerusalem is just clarity, and there's no real arguments in the Talmud of Jerusalem. The way to study the Talmud of Jerusalem is completely different than studying the Talmud of Babylonia. For those of you who are iPhone people, right, we Android people don't understand you. And for those who are Apple, don't understand Android. Why would you have such a phone? The functionalities, the parameters of working are completely different. Le'avdil, Rav Zera now is going to Israel to study the Jerusalem Talmud. What does he do? He fasts for 100 days For 100 days he fasted. Why did he fast? In order to completely forget the methodology of the study of the Talmud of Babylonia. In order, why? In order to be able to integrate the new language, the language of the study of the Talmud of Jerusalem. You understand that when you want to have a new experience, you want to become a vessel for something new, you need to be able to erase the past. You need to be able to erase the parameters and the ways of thinking which brought you to the situation where you were. Like Einstein says, it's impossible to repeat the same action and expect a different result. That's craziness. That's folly. So what did he do? He fasted in order to format the disk. Those who remember when the floppy disks used to exist, we used to put them in the computer, and before you recorded something, you press Control Z on it. You needed to format the disk completely, erase whatever it is, make a reset, and afterwards you were able to absorb new information in that disk. What Rabbi Zera did was a reformatting of his mind, of his way of thinking, of his way of operating, of his way of seeing things, in order to be a true vessel. What does it mean, a true vessel? Our sages teach us, Kli male eno marzik, kli rek marzik. A cup, a vessel which is full is not able to contain. A vessel which is empty is able to contain. So he completely formatted his system in order to be able to contain. Says the Rebbe, when the prince left his house and he went away, it was in order to forget the language that he learned in the royal palace. And when he came back with the voice which is higher than language, which is pre-verb, pre-language. What does that mean? That cry of the heart was something else. We know that every letter, every word is a limitation. When I express something with my mouth and I choose one word over the other, or I express myself in a certain way about myself or about situations, I've limited my whole energy to the word that I chose. Everything in the world, Kabbalah teaches us, is created with letters. So before these letters, there's something that actually is the pre-verbal level. The level which is before the language, before the letters. That is the voice. The simple, pure voice that carries and energizes and vitalizes the letters. So what happens is, says the Rebbe, when he went away, he did like Rav Zera. He erased, completely formatted his disk, and now was coming back on Rosh Hashanah. And now at the moment of the shofar, he is reaching a level which is pre-verbal. He's reaching a level where he can rethink and reformat and re-put the letters of how he's going to look at the world. There is somebody by the name of David Baum, originally a person from a Hasidic background, which I think left the fold of observance. And he wrote a book by the name of Wholeness and the Implicate Order. Over there, he talks about fragmentation, object, implicate order, explicit order, the subject and the object, the subjective and the objective. He explains basically something which is very interesting, which is really a Hasidic thought, and has to do exactly with the subject. So I'm going to explain it a little in his terminology. He says the whole world Externally, it's fragmented. Words fragment reality into this is this, and this is that, and this cannot be that. But there's a higher, deeper reality, a quantum reality, where everything is one. Everything flows to be one. So I want to share with you that in Chassidut, in a ma'amar, in a discourse of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, 1901, the ma'amar talks about the shofar and says that in the shofar you have two dimensions. You have the dimension which is the straits, the dimension of tightness, which is this little hole, it's nothing. And then you have the sound coming out of this bigger hole. Mina metzar karatiyah, anani b'merchaviyah. I called God from the straits, from the tightness. He answered me from the wideness. And he explains over there, the Rabbi Rashab explains. Where are there me'ikim? Where are there people that irk you? Situations that irk you? Situations that limit you? When you are tight. When everything is fragmented, over there, you're tight, you're small-minded. Once you open your mind, and there's no cognitive dissonance between your soul, your inner self, and your body, and your vision of the world, then suddenly everything is one. You're at peace with yourself. You're at a level of menucha, of complete rest. You rest with peace inside of you. You're not in a state of anger, upsetness, and so on and so forth. Let's bring it down to reality, to our practical day-to-day life. The words that we use, the language that we use about situations. You have people complaining, oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's horrible. It's a disaster. You understand that once you put that word on something, you have defined it with your subjective vision, and you've limited it to be this. I am a disaster. I am not successful. I am overwhelmed. At the moment you do that, you are actually taking the essence of who you are, and you are irking it, and you are limiting it and putting it into a box. And that box is very tight. The sound of the shofar, the purpose of the sound of the shofar, is to get you to go above language, above letters, just to go to pure sound. A sound that comes from the depth of who you are. It's very interesting. The shofar comes from an animal. It's a horn of an animal. But once it's disconnected from the animal, it becomes something which is inanimate. It becomes something which is lifeless. It's not attached to life. From that which is the animal which have become lifeless. This is where the cry comes from. Every single one of us has an animalistic soul. That animalistic soul has many desires, has many realities, is fragmented in nature. And therefore, all our suffering comes from that fragmentation. All our suffering comes from the fact that we limit ourselves in everything that we're doing as if they were separate realities, when really everything is one reality, is the reality of God, the reality of essence. Once you realize this, to use the language of Chassidut, in a Chassidic Ma'amar, it says, Haguf Huidgalut haneshama. The body is actually the revelation of the soul. And the Alter Rebbe says something very interesting in chapter 32 of Tanya, a chapter that we should learn very carefully. Over there he explains that the only way to have true ahdut, to have true unity between us, is only if the material reality is secondary to the spiritual reality. If my spiritual reality, my godly reality is the most important, then I'm able to unite because I unite to your godly reality. What takes precedent by me takes precedent by you, and everything I see becomes one. Shema Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, therefore Hashem Echad. Because God is my reality, is my power, is my vision of myself, that godly vision, that godly inspiration of life, that's my reality. Therefore, Hashem Echad. Everywhere I look, it's one, it's all Hashem. I can only love a fellow if I understand that my soul is more important. If my body has taken over, if the material of my life has taken me over, then that's what's important. I'm fragmented, and therefore I cannot unite with you. And therefore, that's why, says the Alter Rebbe, the essence of all the mitzvot is the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisrael, of loving your fellow. Why? Because you can only love once the spiritual reality is your essence. And therefore the body is only a vehicle. And everything is a vehicle to serve that purpose. Let's apply this to stress. I moved from my house. We're renovating the house. We're expanding to do a nice, beautiful sukkah for the community. We're building a mikveh. We went from a big house to a small apartment. We had to get rid of a lot of things. We looked at a lot of memories of the past 22 years of children growing and things we had to throw away, things we put aside. At the same time, we're building the shul upstairs. At the same time, we're building the kids' room downstairs. And at the same time, the holidays are happening. I want to tell you that there's a moment of stress that I experienced, which was tremendous. How am I going to make it? How can I make it? Every step of the way, there's so many things. My life is so fragmented. Let me share with you a story where Rabbi Isaac Chadakov, the Rebbe's secretary, calls one of the shluchim, one of the Rebbe's emissaries, and tells him, the Rebbe has asked that you should build a mikveh. The rabbi, the shaliach, answers the secretary and says, what do you mean? I just built a school and I built a synagogue and I didn't finish paying for them. How can I build a mikveh? So Rabbi Chadakov hung up the phone on him, told him, you're fired, and hung up the phone. He was in shock. He called back. He says, what do you mean I'm fired? He said to him, if you think it's with your power that you build the school and the shul, for sure you won't be able to build a mikveh. It's not with your power you build a school, it's not with your power you build a shul, and it's not with your power you build a mikveh. If you live a fragmented life, and you say to yourself, I have this project, that project, and this project, and this project, and so on and so forth, how am I going to make it? It's overwhelming. You become fragmented. What happens when you become fragmented? Your body is heavy, you become sad and depressed, and you're overwhelmed, and you're all these things which your negative language speaks. The moment you understand that the body, not only the body, but every aspect of your life is a revelation of your soul, is a vehicle to let your soul express itself, to express Hashem through you, then you realize it's all one thing. There's no separate things. There's no separate projects. It's about me getting to my essence and understanding who am I connected with. Changing, formatting this language, which is a limiting language. When Rabbi Steinsaltz, the one that elucidated the whole Talmud, monumental what he did, was working on 3 projects. One of them was the Talmud. Wrote to the Rebbe, what can I do? I'm overwhelmed with the work. There's too much work. What should I cut off? The Rebbe told him, add. He thought about it and he said to himself, 1 second, what is the Rebbe saying? Indeed, when you have a liter bottle of water and you want to put more water, you might be able to put a few more milliliters. But you can't put really much more than that. You might blow up a little the bottle and add a little more. But you can't do more than that. The only way to be able to change the capacity of this bottle is to bring it back to the level of ayin, of nothingness, to bring it back to its root. Completely make it melt to its root, and then blow it into a bottle that's a liter and a quarter. That's what he did. The moment of the blowing of the shofar is the moment that you reach the pre-verbal language, where you reformat the whole language and you say, you know what? This is language I'm not going to use anymore. I am one with Hashem. I am nothing, just like that person at the kotel. Everything you've given me is a gift. Let's be serious and look around us. How many lives were taken? How many people younger than us, unfortunately, did not make it, or suffered illnesses, or suffered losses, and so on and so forth? Just on a simple basis, let's look at all this and realize how grateful we need to be for the incredible blessings that God gave us. But you know what can make these blessings greater and expand the blessings? Once our language is going to expand. Once we're going to reach that level of the cry of the heart that says, you know what? It's true. I might have been in the king's palace. I might have been the prince that learned that language. But it wasn't my language. One day, when the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was a child, one of the Hasidim, older Hasidim that worked on himself a lot, was designated to instruct him to become more of a Hasid. He said, make my son into a Hasid. So the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe as a child said, I'm already a Hasid, I'm already a pious, I'm already following the way of my ancestors. He said, no, you're a small Hasid. In Yiddish, a Chasidl, a small Hasid. He said, what's the difference between a small Hasid and a big Hasid? He said, a small Hasid is copy-paste. You saw this, so you say this. You saw this, you do this. But it's not you. The prince leaves, and now it's his language. It's my connection with God. It's not me just copying what everybody else is doing. Getting to that inner voice, reformatting things and saying, you know what? I'm going to think big. And that's why the Rebbe said, if you want wealth this year, make a pledge. Make a pledge. Don't wait for how much you're going to make in order to give 10%. Already pledge 10% of what you want to make. And Hashem will give it to you. And I can tell you on a personal basis, I've tried it, and it's absolutely mind-boggling. Once you have your mindset that you're ready to give so much, you just opened the channel to a new language, a language of abundance, a language where you're no longer in the straits, you're no longer in the tightness. You have a mind that can grow. Why? Because the mind, the heart, the body, the soul, the essence our core essence of who you are all one. And at that level, nobody can irk you, nobody can block you. So this is the sound of the shofar. So I would like to propose that as a preparation to Rosh Hashanah, sit down with yourself and say to yourself, if I had to reformat the language, what would I reformat? How would I reformulate everything? What would be that essential core that I am? What's my core essence? Unlimited, unaltered, unfragmented. And write it down. If you want to take it to the next level, think to yourself how much you want to give to charity this year. And write it down. You will see it works. Exert yourself a little more. Bezat Hashem, those who are interested, you can send me a private message. And I'll send you a very special 23-minute movie from Beryl Solomon, where he explains this whole concept of pledging before you start the new year. God bless you. Tiva v'chatima tova, shana tova u'mtuka. May this Rosh Hashanah be a Rosh Hashanah which will hear the great shofar, the shofar of redemption, the shofar of peace, a shofar of great victory for Am Yisrael, not only globally, but personally in our souls with ourselves. May we be victorious to completely connect and bond to our true self, and let no one in the world stop us with negativity. God bless you.